Hello everyone, I'm Vikram Basti, Snowflake Practice Lead at IT Infotech. Welcome you all for an exciting fireside chat session with two extremely genius data architects, Mr. Suraj Rajan from Snowflake and Mr. Prakash Desai from IT Infotech. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Maybe we can start with some introduction for the audience that you could describe on what your role is at your organization.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Suraj Rajan. I work as Senior Solutions Architect at Snowflake. Overall, I think I got about 18 years of experience working in data alongside different workloads. And out of those 18 years, I've been working with Snowflake for about 4 years, but I joined Snowflake as a permanent employee in August 2020. Look forward to the session. Thanks, Vikram.
Thanks, Suraj.
Hi, Vikram. I am Prakash Desai. I am a solution architect working with ITC. I am part of the Snowflake Solutions team and responsible for building modern data warehouses using cloud-based solution, which also includes the migrating traditional data warehouse platform into Snowflake and all other analytical platforms. I have around 20 years of experience in the data space, and that is about myself. Thanks, Vikram.
Thank you so much, Prakash. Thank you, Suraj. Um, in post-COVID world, having a solid data strategy is now a matter of survival for manufacturers, retailers, consumer product companies. The most advanced companies are using data to flex with their needs of their consumer and demand of their organization. And the majority of the industry is simply struggling to access the insight-rich data and unlock value from it. This is exactly why manufacturers, retailers, CPG, and retail data service companies are joining Snowflake's Data Cloud to help their organizations to be more data-driven to enable rich merchandising and customer insights. And we have Snowflake experts with us today here to help us know more about this. But before we begin, we have a small poll for our viewers to express their opinion on what are the key challenges today the organizations are facing to establish a robust data availability strategy. So probably you can see the poll on your screen, and I request each of our viewers to opine their view. And the poll is open, and request our viewers to opine their view on the question. So while our viewers are sharing their view, so one of the key challenge in today's world is to improve operational efficiencies with faster data access, not only the organizational data but also the external data, the cross-industry data, third-party data insights, and demographic data. So how Snowflake Data Cloud helps organizations to improve their operations? Suraj, probably you are the best person to give us an insight about this.
Absolutely, yeah. You rightly pointed, saying there's been a rising demand with data silos, for example, and Snowflake's unique proposition or a unified architecture of Snowflake is what we call the data cloud. So Snowflake's data cloud is actually made of two key elements. One is the Snowflake Platform itself, which provides an architectural design to be able to connect your business globally at any scale. And we're talking about Snowflake being cloud agnostic. You can have your data hosted on any of the three public data domains like GCP, AWS, or Azure, right? And the second element to data cloud is the content itself. When you talk about content, it's not just the content that the enterprise has. Of course, enterprise itself has a lot of data within different departments, domains, and so on. But we're also talking about valuable content that populates the data cloud that can be mobilized to drive better business decisions, product services, business outcomes from various third-party companies. It could be data associated to weather, it could be data associated to foreign exchange, especially with COVID the last 2 years. Snowflake's data share related to COVID schema has been phenomenal, where various organizations have actually been using it to make real-time decisions. And this includes data from customers, SaaS providers, partners, and so on. As you put the slide on the screen, for example, the previous one, Vikram, is actually the outcome of the Forrester research, where one of the key problem with a lot of companies, with all the companies that I've worked with, is the proliferation of all these data silos. There's been phenomenal increase in the application cloud, like you have Salesforce, Workday, various other platforms. You have infrastructure clouds like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. So the amount of data that the company now has exploded, and it's growing across different environments, right? So, and these are causing to different data silos. And the key problem is not just the data itself. How do you then go about managing these in terms of the data governance? How would you extract value? How would you collaborate across all these multiple technologies, clouds, hosted on different cloud platforms? And rising to that, other key challenges, the various mergers and acquisitions that a lot of companies are going through. And this is where we talk about Snowflake's Data Cloud, which, in our opinion, is the best approach to eliminate all the silos. And that's what the next slide talks about, which gives you the different elements of the data cloud that I just talked about. One is the Snowflake platform itself, where you have different workloads being supportive on the Snowflake data platform, right from data warehousing all the way through applications. And I'm sure the viewers are aware of Snowflake Summit. Watch out for Snowflake Summit because we are actually introducing additional workloads to be hosted on Snowflake platform. And in addition to that, you can also host in a lot of third-party content on top of the Snowflake platform. And that's where I talked about not just the third-party applications like weather data, Forex, but it could be different applications. It could be customer-related data. For example, when you're talking about retailers, a lot of companies start sharing data with third-party companies like Dunnhumby, like Nielsen, like Nectar, and so on. So there's a lot of value insights that these companies can provide to existing organizations. And that's what I think companies have started to realize, and that's led to an explosion of data cloud within Snowflake world.
Thank you so much, Suraj. That was really fascinating. And Snowflake Data Cloud has an excellent reputation as an analytics platform for blisteringly fast query performance. And the poll that we just published, 39% of the people feel that the performance is a real bottleneck for any organization to have a robust data strategy. Mm-hmm. So how Snowflake provides speed, high performance search, when there are no indexes, etc.?
It's a great question. So if you look at the Snowflake architecture there, this one, what we're talking about is three unique layers that constitutes the Snowflake architecture. So the underlying is the storage. And when you talk about storage, the storage could be across cloud, what we call a snow grid, because you can have storage across multiple cloud providers. In middle, what you have is the compute layer, which is often called as the virtual warehouses. So that's the processing hub. And next, on top, you have the global services, which captures all the metadata and so on. So when you talk about optimization and so on, it's the cloud services, which is also referred to as the intelligent infrastructure, which captures all the metadata. So Snowflake architecture is unique, where as and when you start loading data, all the metadata is captured within global services. So you don't need to rely on indexes or any of that sort. And all the data is actually held in micro partitions. And when I say all data, I actually mean any type of data, right? Snowflake supports structured, semi-structured, unstructured data. And using this, you can sort of have any workloads right from data engineering all the way to data sharing, enabling all your use cases. And then the way it works is when you run any query on Snowflake, it's the optimizer that optimizes your query by looking at the metadata, ensuring that the query plan is good, and then getting results at a much faster pace. And one of the other key USP of Snowflake is the dynamic sizing of virtual warehouses or compute clusters, as we say. Based on the demand, you can easily scale in, scale out, scale up, scale down, without having to shut down any of your compute resources. So I think it's the fundamental architecture of Snowflake that really enables you to not just run any type of workloads, but run it in a more efficient and faster way.
Thank you, Suraj. To be honest, I want to echo what you just said because it's from my personal experience as well. The performance is one of the critical aspects, that we have seen when you move from a legacy data warehouse to Snowflake. That's an instant impact that you see on your solution. Before we move on to the next question, I have again a poll that's specifically for migration projects. So what are the key challenges or the risk that our viewers or audience want to express that they see as a challenge when you are migrating from end of life data platforms to cloud data warehouse typically? So a poll is going to be presented to you. Please request all our viewers to opine your thoughts and views on the same.
I'm really excited to see what our viewers think when it comes to key migration challenges.
Absolutely.
Because when you do, prior to migration, we do what's called a migration readiness assessment, which we also work with your team, Vikram, and I'm sure Prakash will talk a bit more about it. But yeah, I think the insights is quite fascinating, which sort of gives you all the information that you need to successfully embark on your migration journey. And yeah, the options that I see in the poll, yeah, it's probably something that we all can relate to.
True. While I think our team is working on publishing the poll, probably once the poll comes up, I request all the viewers to share their opinion. Prakash, you have been part of critical migration projects. One of the key questions every customer has in their mind is, what are the key challenges, risks that you encounter while moving from an end-of-life data platform to Snowflake, and how we can, how we as a Snowflake partner can help to de-risk them?
Yeah, thanks, Vikram. Good question. Just to start with, before even getting into the challenges, I would like to go back a little bit and put some light on why does most of the organizations are moving into cloud data platforms. I mean, that would be one of the curious question. Why all running data platforms have to move into a cloud platforms? There are key factors based on whatever our experience is. One of them is the data modernization, which is everyone wants to take a shot at. Second is the performance. Performance is a very important key area. Then we have a data availability, on-time data availability, because over a period of time, the volume of the data is increasing significantly. I mean, the social media integrations are happening, which were not there maybe 10, 15 years back. More of a structured data was always part of the data analytics and other areas. And finally, the cost. Cost is also one of the things which also forces many of the organizations to move from traditional data warehousing or a business intelligence platforms into cloud-based platforms. So coming into the challenges, the first and foremost, I think I should put 2 or 3 striking points. The first one is the data model reengineering. So based on our experience, what we see is most of the data models are designed for the specific technologies. Most of them are traditional data warehouses, which were designed for the on-premise systems, traditional relational databases, or some of them are for even big data platforms like Hadoop, Spark, and things like that. That is one of the thing is challenging because when you move into a Snowflake, you have to consider a lot of other factors which are very specific to Snowflake, which improves not only the cost, even the performance of the overall system, especially the micro partitioning and some other areas where your model has to be perfect in order to get the maximum benefit of it.
True.
The second point is also the data types. Data types is something you have to change when you move into a cloud-based data warehouses, because the data types which were historically available may not be same. So these are the 2 things which come under the data engineering. The second challenge is the what I would call it as a bloating transformation logic. Whenever the data platform is built, generally it is built as per on that day's requirement. But over a period of time, lot of other sources get attached to that platform, due to which a lot of transformation logic will change over a period of time. And it is not necessary that transformation logic is in a very integrated way. That will get into a very silo. Some of the time it is repeated. Some of the times it may not be in a very optimal way. And any organization doesn't want to carry forward all this historical baggage when they move into a next platform. So the typical challenge is to streamline this transformation logic in such a way where we can get a maximum benefit out of this cloud data warehouse. That is the transformation logic part of it, which also touches upon the areas like data quality issues and things like that. The third point I would suggest is, is the history data migration, which generally is a idea. What we would have is we have to move all the historical data into cloud-based platform. But one of the key challenge over there is the historical platforms also contain the data quality issues, some of the data anomalies, and cleansing that data in a very particular way and fitting the right data into a new re-engineered data platform becomes one of the biggest challenge, which also includes the reconciliation of the data as well. Lastly, the orchestration part, which is anyway the subset of the first two areas. The orchestration has to be perfect. What happens is over a period of time, the repeated pipelines have been run all over the area, which may not give the perfect benefit. So orchestration is also one of the area where our experience is that by scheduling the pipelines perfectly, we can get the benefit out of the platform. So these are the certain areas, Vikram.
Yeah, I'm sure the audience are agreeing with you as well, because we got a whopping 33% vote for data model reengineering. And again, I couldn't agree with you more on the orchestration sequencing part, because when you are in the end of life platforms or the legacy data warehouses, you might be creating your orchestration pipeline considering the limitations that you see on the on-prem platforms, because of it's a different footprint altogether. And when it comes to cloud, you need a special tactics to handle, because it's purely the consumption model and the pay-as-you-go approach.
That's right.
Prakash, for the customers who decides to embark their journey to migrate into Snowflake Cloud, how Snowflake and IT's Infotech helps to enable a faster migration, with zero risk and achieve first-time right migration?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And Vikram, what I can say from my experience, we had a particular model which has been very successful for a couple of implementation, and I can call it as a first right time migration. To start with, we get into a product consulting with Snowflake, where the opportunity assessment, return on investment, and the fitment of the product, other things are generally discussed in detail. We will also have a migration assessment workshop, which we specifically do with the solution architects of Snowflake. And we will come up with the plan and estimated benefit. This is the area where ITC and Snowflake work together to make a final blueprint for the execution. That is the first part of it.
I'm sure that Suraj terms this as more like an open heart surgery.
Absolutely yes.
Yeah. The second part is basically a solution design, a normal software lifecycle where we work on an enterprise template. We redesign the data model. We redesign the entire architecture so that it can fit into the Snowflake's best practices. As we all are aware, the micro-partitioning approach of a Snowflake has been helping a lot to get the maximum performance benefit. And we design our architecture entirely based on the Snowflake's best practices. In addition to that, we also have certain frameworks, and we call these frameworks, there are series of frameworks, and we call it as Cloud Data Platform Toolkit, which is specifically developed by ITC, and we have implemented in a couple of implementation. And what it does is, it helps in various areas. For example, the first challenge we have said, the data model re-engineering. We have a framework which uses the old data model and converts into the new data model, especially the data types and certain areas of the denormalization. This particular framework does. Then all the ETL codes, which were part of the historical data loads, either it is in traditional tools or any of the ANSI tools, we have a framework which directly converts these historical transformations or the ETL into a Snowflake compatible procedures, by which we are able to save 70 to 80% of our efforts there. That is the second thing. Third, we also have a framework for the history data migration. And when I call it as a history data migration, it is not 100 table moved into 100 table, because when our data model is changed, 100 table may become 80 table or 100 table may become 120 table. And that also applies to the volume of data. For example, out of million records, maybe a few thousand records may be anomalies, and those should not be part of the new system. That is what the organization's expectation is. And our tool is such a way we can configure, we can do this exercise also, right from data extraction from the source system, the compare into loading into the target and comparing. We have the tool for that. And we also have a tool for reporting purpose also. For example, a particular reporting platform is built on top of Snowflake. We have a framework which converts that into that particular technology specific compatible code. And
So
this is
basically,
about ITC's toolkit.
So just
Okay.
a bit more insight around, when we speak about automated data migration framework, you spoke about doing the validations on the target system. So what are these typical validations, which are critical that someone has to follow when they're doing the data migrations as well?
Yeah, basically, most of them are functional validation. We also do the technical validation. I think technical validations are something which most of us does, basically the data types, the value, volumes, and things like that. We also implement the functional validation as well. We can write a certain rules in our tool and we can validate some of the things. Some of them are basically the relationship validation we can do. Some of them are limit validation we can do. Some of them are basically the referential integrity are the certain things. These are the validation. In addition to that, there are some statistical validation also. Basically the row count, the maximum, minimum values, the ranges, the skewed data values. These are the certain things which we have done historically. But it is not limiting to this much because tool is such a way that you can configure any validation on the fly. You can put it as a part of the metadata and you can run this tool as you like. So that's about the validations, Vikram.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Prakash. Before we move on to the next topic,
I have not touched upon the localization. One of the key area of users' demand nowadays is the subscription model, or I call it as a data products. Historically, we used to push the data to the downstream systems. And Snowflake gives a very good feature, which is data sharing without any footprint. So we generally operate in hub and spoke model, and using Snowflake's data sharing framework, we are able to give the data to our end customers or subscribers very seamlessly. This is another additional feature. And these are the certain things which helped us to successfully implement multiple solutions and with the right first time, Vikram.
Great, Prakash, and a truly inspiring journey that you are speaking about. Again, Suraj, there have been a lot of buzz around Snowflake's data sharing, just like Prakash mentioned. Please, can you shed some light on how this is unlike traditional data sharing methodologies?
Yeah, we've all been developers in the past, right? So talking about data sharing, because Snowflake supports multi-cloud, what it's done is it's completely redefined how data is accessed and moved within organizations. So when you're talking about data sharing, your typical use cases in the past is where you had to collaborate on data, you had to move it across environments. That meant that you had to grab files from FTP servers, scrape your APIs, use ETL tools like Informatica, DataStage, or set up different data marts to grant access to data. Now, the problem with all this data pipeline is that, number one, it's costly, it's time consuming to build and maintain. But also the other key challenge is governance. Like, how do you ensure that your data is completely governed? Because once data is moved, it's out of your control, right? And in most scenarios, your data was always delayed by design. So there were key questions which always remained outstanding. So where do you get your data from? How are you moving your data? How big is the data volume? How are you currently sourcing your third-party data? And what are your plans for ingesting a new data in the near future as it arrives? And the key business implications I always was asked when I was, working years ago is how important. Like, these are all pain points to the business because your business had to rely on data engineering to build data pipelines. So there is cost, effort, money involved in it, and then you have to sort of build your support model around it. But now Snowflake is fundamentally different, where you don't have to actually move your data if you're sharing data within the same region. So data sharing allows you to provide access to live data without any ETL or movement of data, and all that is done through the metadata. So if you're sharing data with other, it could be sharing data within your same business domains, or it could be sharing data with, say, other customers within the same region. If it's the same region, you absolutely don't move any data, and the access to the data is live, and you can have your same role-based access control implemented. So as a data owner or a data producer, you're still in control of your data. You control who data consumers are, at what point can they consume the data, what granularity of access would they have. So you're in complete in charge. So that way, your data governance is consistent across all the features within Snowflake, and that's the advantage. So when you talk about accessing data from data lake, or when you talk about sharing data to third-party companies, your governance protocols end-to-end remain intact, and that's the advantage. And what you're sharing here is the way you can actually start collaborating and sharing data in the data cloud. So you can tap into Snowflake's data marketplace to discover third-party data. So, and that third-party data is actually phenomenally growing. So you have a lot of companies using data sharing as a mean of monetizing data. And you can either be your data provider, or it could just be a consumer. And sharing data isn't just for consumers who are on Snowflake. So there are multiple ways, right? You can either do a direct share with a Snowflake customer. That's what we call a peer-to-peer customer. But you can also share data with companies who are not on Snowflake using reader accounts. And again, you can sort of publish your data into marketplace if there is an appetite for users to consume data. So you don't have to worry about who the consumers are. But if you think that there is an appetite for a consumer to consume data because there's an enriched value within the data that you've shared, you can easily publish your data to marketplace. And the next slide that you showed, Vikram, is a visualization representing data sharing over the years. So when we launched this feature in 2019, 2020, you had companies starting to share data across. And now if you look at the footprint of data sharing, it's amazing. So what does it mean? For viewers who are actually looking at this, what does it mean looking at the impact the data cloud has for organizations? And this is where we can help you. Snowflake Professional Services can sort of customize your visualization, where if you're working for a retailer or if you're working for a financial company, we can help you define use cases or stories around what data sharing would mean for your organization, how it can help transform your business by mobilizing your data. And we can sort of talk through some of the use cases that other customers are working, especially if it's a retailer or if it's a financial. Like I've got companies across multiple domains, for example, insurance companies, finance, retail, and so on. And every company that I work with have a genuine case of using data share. And that's where the whole intention of data sharing is it's sort of opened companies' vision in terms of not just using data within its enterprise, but how it can start collaborating data across different enterprises and bring in more business value across the whole ecosystem.
Great. And Suraj, before we move on to the next topic, we have questions from our viewer.
Yep.
So one of the question is how Snowflake is different. What's USP of Snowflake compared to other cloud data warehouses today? What is that in terms of efficiencies or cost, or something unique about Snowflake compared to its competitors?
I would say right from the architecture of Snowflake, everything is unique. Like Snowflake probably was the first cloud data warehouse. Like even if you look at the whole Snowflake journey, it sort of transitioned itself, right? Initially, when Snowflake went GA way back in 2015, it was just meant to be a cloud database. Then it became a cloud warehouse, and it was the first cloud native warehouse written from scratch. So every line of Snowflake was actually written from scratch. It's not an adoption of, say, for example, PostgreSQL, which a lot of other databases are. Which meant that fundamentally the architecture is different, where you're sort of segregating your compute and storage. Now, a lot of other competitors, I don't want to name them, they're starting to copy and replicate what Snowflake has done. It can be painful, especially if you're adopting the likes of Postgres, right? And that's where Snowflake fundamentally had this advantage, because everything was written from the ground up. the founders had a great vision, and you should watch their video on YouTube. It's quite fascinating in terms of how they could think ahead, say 10-15 years, and then build an application which not just fulfills the current use cases, but you're sort of future-proofing the next 10-15 years, which is amazing. So to answer your question, architecture is fundamentally different. USP, and like Prakash mentioned, you have the global services which has all the micro partitions, so you don't need any indexes. All the statistics around your data is captured as when the data is loaded, so the users just have to run queries, and the brain, which is the global services, interacts with the heart, which is the compute, and gets you the data, and the data can be across multiple cloud, right? So again, a lot of other competitors may not necessarily have support for other cloud providers, but Snowflake is cloud agnostic. And a lot of companies that I've worked with in the past, we always talk about vendor lock-in, right? And we get to hear that from the Snowflake side as well. But if you look at it, we're not necessarily locking you from anything. You can easily load data into Snowflake hosted on any cloud platform, and you can easily unload the data onto any cloud platform. Like I've been working with you and Prakash on a use case, right, for a customer, where we've been extracting data from Snowflake as well for consumers. And because it can be across different cloud providers, you're not necessarily locking into any cloud. And that's the advantage of Snowflake, that it sort of enables you to build your use cases across seamlessly. And again, given the architecture and given how efficient it is, of course, it's a cloud offering, it's a SaaS offering, but we provide you all the cost monitoring, best practices, recommendations, and so on, to make sure that your solution is as effective as it can be. Like we sort of do as a customer engagement, we actually do what we call the business value assessment, and we do a business value realization. And it's phenomenal to see the value Snowflake has brought to customers in terms of untapping all the various use cases for a far more efficient and cost-effective manner. And that's the advantage. Yes, we often get here to say that Snowflake is expensive, as with any other product, and that's where we talk about collaborating with Snowflake, collaborating with companies like ITC, Infotech, because a product is as good as you understand the architecture and as good as the implementation is. So, and this is where I think Snowflake really differentiates itself from all its competitors, because fundamentally the architecture is different on the ground up, and the pace of innovation on Snowflake is expanding over months. Like I really struggle to catch up with all the features of Snowflake. And the other advantage, right? If my key take on Snowflake is, end of the day, Snowflake is still one product. Like if you look at Snowflake, for those who are familiar with Snowflake, you have different capabilities for Snowflake, right? You have external tables, you have unstructured data, you have Snowpipe, you have Task. But all these are just features on Snowflake. You can write UDFs, you can write external functions. Now we have Snowpark. So all these are just features. If you try to compare this with other cloud providers, you would probably build a multiple hop of different services where the point of failure is far more higher than Snowflake, because Snowflake is just one platform creating you a seamless architecture end to end.
True. And couldn't agree more, Suraj, because unlike all other cloud platforms that I have seen are on-prem softwares running on the cloud infrastructure and truly not cloud native. And Snowflake is one of the genuine cloud native platform, highly scalable, and we have a hands-on experience with the performance benefits that Snowflake has achieved for our customers. Again, Prakash, Suraj, based on your experience, I think this is gonna answer most of the queries that has been asked by our viewers. What are the instant improvements that you have seen when you migrate from on-prem to Snowflake Cloud? Probably Prakash, you can go, and then Suraj, you can add.
Sure, Vikram. I will quote some of the examples what we have seen. Some of our implementations, which the implementation is like across the globe, across all the countries. That is the magnitude of the implementation. And historically, basically the requirement of these countries is data should be available early in the morning so that business can use the data. However, the historical experience is data used to be available at 2 p.m. in the afternoon instead of morning 6. Correct. That was the expectation, 2 p.m. And after implementation, also data is available at 2 o'clock. but instead of PM, it has changed to AM now. So you can imagine what kind of improvements it is subjected to your imagination now. Okay, so that is what one of the example. The second example where the another implementation, which is US based organization, where the data, the requirement is data is required every few hours. And now we have implemented such a solution, it is almost near real time now. The data is available near real time. So that is the level of satisfaction the business is having post implementation of our solution. Of course, it's a joint venture between a product and the solution. So that is one of the example. Now this is about the data availability. Coming to the performance side of it, Vikram, I think I have to be a little conservative in saying that in some of the implementation, the benefit is like unimaginable. It is by 95%. So for example, somebody is the operational cost was say 100K, now it is only 5K. So 95K is a saving. So this is just a number, I mean notional number I am quoting, but actually the volume and the cost benefit which we have achieved, or we have the organization have achieved by implementing this solution is massive. So these are the two examples. And thirdly, the user adoption. We have seen a significant level of user adoption in both the implementations. And in one of the implementation, we have around 35 to 40% of the increase in the user adoption after the implementation of this solution. Suraj, you can also add based on your other experience as well.
I think one of my favorite when it comes to migration is the support. Once you have Snowflake up and running, productionized, the amount of support issues that you probably would encounter in an enterprise is almost zero. Like it's like autopilot. Like Prakash mentioned about fulfilling your data availability, fulfilling your performance, lowering the cost, business value. Is we all know that Snowflake brings in a lot of business value the moment you go live. And the advantage is with Snowflake or with any migration project, and this is where it's really important to engage the right resources. The data availability in terms of making decisions is much faster. So when we talk about agile, when we talk about sprints, there are a lot of projects that I work with where you can actually start realizing the business value at the end of sprint 1 in 2 weeks, right? And that's the advantage you get working with such companies. Gone are the days where you probably had to wait 3 to 6 months to get your use case deployed, at which point your KPIs may have moved on, right? We live in a competitive world. But now, in 2 weeks, you can actually deploy something to production and start realizing the business value. And I'm not talking about putting all your data into Snowflake. You can still have your data across your data lake, different cloud providers and so on. But what Snowflake provides you is the seamless access where you can just query your data across different platforms. By doing so, you're sort of creating a more federated model. Like we talked the likes about data mesh, right? That's a new term that a lot of companies are adopting. So the advantage is you can sort of federate your whole data model to different business domains so that they can start using data. And before joining Snowflake, I worked as a contractor for a retail company. It's a famous retail company. And the words of Chief Data Officer still resonates with me. What she said is, she wanted every employee to use Snowflake, right from Chief Data Officer or even Chief Executive Officer, all the way to a data analyst to use Snowflake to make data-driven decision. So gone are the days where you have to use gut feeling, right? It's always a data-driven decision. And the only way you can democratize your data or make data-driven decision is by having a more robust data model. All the principles, best practices, everything has to come together. But we've seen companies do it brilliantly well with Snowflake. And security on top, because we've heard a lot about data breaches, social engineering, and so on in the last few years. Security has been a key emphasis on Snowflake. So all this as part of the migration and has sort of brought in tremendous results. And again, talking about data modeling, Snowflake is again agnostic, right? It supports both your third normal form, it supports dimensional modeling, data vault, and once you have the data, the advantage you have is you can then re-engineer based on your business requirements. So it offers you business agility as well, in addition to all the various things that we talked about.
Thank you so much, Suraj Prakash. And we have one more exciting question from our viewers about Snowsight. We have been hearing a lot around Snowsight, and what is Snowflake's vision? Is it going to be a more of a business intelligence solution in future, or it's just for monitoring purpose?
What I would say is, please watch, or I mean, if you can, please make an effort to join Snowflake Summit, because we have a lot of exciting announcements to make across different products.
Great.
As it stands now, yes, Snowsight gives you the visualization where you can run your queries, and this is based on the company that Snowflake bought over a couple of years ago, because we want to improvise on our UI experience. But Snowsight is a GA now, which means you can start using the new worksheets, and you can start collaborating with worksheets with team members and so on. And again, you have inbuilt dashboards if you want to look at role hierarchies, if you want to look at usage and so on. It all sort of comes inbuilt as part of your Snowsight. But there's a lot of other product enrichments, new features being built on Snowsight. I don't want to put anything out there yet, because there are a lot of requirements still being worked in development and will be announced as a private preview. But watch out for Snowflake Summit announcements. It is very exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suraj. And just last question, probably Prakash, you can answer in 30 seconds. So this is something that's easy for you. So, most of the organizations today lack resilience in the data integration solution, resulting lack of trust in the data for the data consumers. How, IT's Infotech or Snowflake helps to ensure the systems are working as per expectations post the migration is complete? How you'll ensure the data is accurate? What are the best practices? Obviously, Snowflake provides a certain set of best practices, but how do you ensure the data ops is, running efficiently? And we have all the data available at right time.
Yeah, thanks Vikram. To answer it quickly, ITC has developed a tool which in layman's language I call it as a pathological health check report. Like a person's all health parameters are being checked. In this particular tool, we actually track every parameter which is required to run the system perfectly. To start with, we check the health of a virtual warehouse. We check the time taken for each of the processes. We map it against the tolerance level. We check for the credits. We check for the cost. We do the data reconciliation across the layer. For example, 100 records are coming. These 100 records are reaching to the final layer, yes or no. That also we check. We check for a particular type of validations. I mean, earlier in our call, you have touched upon the validation during migration. But believe me, we are doing it runtime. Yes, we are doing it runtime. And we also check for the query execution stats and queued, blocked queries, by which we are continuously improving our warehouse, optimization, so that we can reduce the cost and get the best of the performance. I think in a short of time, I mean, these are the things at a high level I can put it across. Thanks, Vikram.
Yeah. Thanks, Prakash. Sorry to because we're running out of time. And that's fascinating. And everything that you have shared today is going to be enormously helpful for everyone listening. So I want to thank you so much for joining and chatting with us today, and very excited for the upcoming Snowflake Summit 2022 in Vegas. And to all our audience, thank you so much for joining our session today. I hope you are inspired as I am. And, I encourage you to learn more about Snowflake Platform and how it enables the data cloud by joining and exploring the Snowflake Summit sessions as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and hope to speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Vikram. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.